This is awesome. I love this exhaust. It makes a huge difference. Hi, Dylan here from Throttle Company. We're here to do another episode of In the Loop, where we take one of our bikes. We have a motorcycle shop here, Throttle Company Vintage Motorcycles, here in Columbus, Ohio. So we do vintage bikes, and we also do new bikes, new Royal Enfields. So we're going to take one of those bikes around our little test ride that we do. We call it In the Loop. So here we are. Here's some of our vintage bikes, but today it's a brand new bike. It is a 2021 Royal Enfield GT. It's an Ice Queen, which is just the white color, but that's what they call it. Here we see some Himalayans as we pass by those, very popular bikes. I have another video on those. But what makes this one unique, this particular bike, this motorcycle, is that it has these AEW, you can even see that here, hopefully, AEW exhaust. And they're made in India. And that's actually where Royal Enfields come from, where they're made. They're also made in a factory in Argentina. Just recently they started that. But they make this exhaust for the Royal Enfield, and these particular ones fit on the GT and the Interceptor. Pardon the beeping. They're doing construction next door. We're getting an expansion here on a building. So anyway, they make these exhausts for these two bikes. It's like a 10-minute install. If you can see this bracket, it's all welded very nice, and it's a stainless piece, and it just slides on. There's one bolt here to tighten and one bolt there, and you're done. And so that one per each side. We actually sell these exhausts, I think they're around $450. So they're a nice alternative to the S&S, which is sort of the official exhaust for the Royal Enfields, which is about $675. So you got a little bit of an option here, and this bike just needs its first test ride. So when we get these bikes, they have a couple miles on them. They've done a test in India, but we haven't done our test. So we put the battery in, we put gas in it, we make sure the oil's at the level that it's supposed to be. We put air in the tires, and then we have to take them around, take a ride on it. We put the mirrors on them as well. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I just thought I'd bring you along, especially because this bike has a unique sound to it, and you'll hear that here in a second. So at idle, it kind of sounds like a normal Royal Enfield. You get that normal idle sound, and then when I get on it, get a little growl, get a little brap to it. So let's take it on the road. I've only just sat in the showroom here and revved it up. I've never actually had one on the road to see what it's like. And if you've had a motorcycle with a louder exhaust, it feels faster. So we'll see if this actually feels faster. And theoretically, we get a little bit more power. You know, we have a freer flowing exhaust system. The Royal Enfields are fuel injected, and the computer controls your fuel. So if we get a freer flowing exhaust or an intake or the combination, we get both, we get automatically, that computer will adjust for it, and we get a little bit more performance out of it without having to do anything. So let's see. Wow, it feels great. So we got 2 miles on this bike, so it's new anyway, but we're going to take it around. We're not going to go crazy on it. Like I said, this is not a demo bike or anything. This is going to be someone's motorcycle. So I'm just doing the normal test drive that I would do, which is just make sure the brakes work, the clutch works, the mirrors are, that one's maybe a little loose. They're always brand new mirrors, so we got to, I might need my other hand. Always got to dial them in. Well, clutch works. Put it in neutral there at the light. That was good. That sound is awesome. I love it. Hopefully that comes across on camera. I might do some footage afterwards when we're sitting there. I can't think of a way easily to like attach another microphone while I'm riding without just getting a ton of wind noise. So I'll figure something out as far as if you guys can't hear the sound, or maybe I'll try to edit in the sound and make it so the bike sound is a little bit more obvious. There you have it at idle, pretty similar, a little more grabby. Speaking of sound, we got a siren up ahead. But at idle here, it sounds like a stock bike pretty much. I barely even hear it. Well, anyway, if you've never ridden one of these, or you're not familiar with the Royal Enfield specifically, the GT and the Interceptor are basically the same bike, same frame and engine. I'm going to be quiet here as this passes. So the GT and the Interceptor are the same engine, same frame. It's actually made by a pretty famous frame company called Harris Performance in England, designed by them. And they're famous frame makers, and the frame is awesome. I mean, this bike feels very planted, very predictable. That's what you want from a frame. I think the suspension is great. I've heard everything from it's too hard to it's too soft, so that to me means it's just right, and it actually feels great. We go over a little bit of bumps here, but you know, as far as giving it a little bit of when you're really trying to get into the turns, I think it just feels super predictable and reliable. Anyway, the GT and the Interceptor, so we are on the GT. The difference here being that I have clip-on handlebars, so these clip on here, and they have a little bit of a rise to them, but they're not a bar. We don't have a handlebar, we have individual clip-on pieces. And that gives me more of a leaned in, leaned over stance, a little bit sportier. You know, I'm tucked down, the wind isn't hitting me as hard, and I get to get a little bit more aggressive stance, which gets me into the turns and the corners and more of a racy stance. If you're not familiar with that, my feet are actually a little bit further back, so my knees are further forward, and my feet are not directly below my knees. They're a little bit further back, so it's not how you would sit in like an office chair. It's more leaned over, and that again is sportiness. So I'm getting a little more into my race stance, and it feels much sportier, but performance-wise, it's the exact same as the Interceptor. So if you don't care about that sporty stance, or that's not for you, then the Interceptor is where I would go. But here I feel a little bit sportier. We got that different exhaust. Everything's coming together. I don't think I'm going to make this there, so we're going to stop for a second. Always dangerous because the people behind me are impatient. There we go, as an example, right on cue. Hopefully get some growl there. This exhaust is just about perfect. So the way that this exhaust works is it has a baffle in it, but that baffle is removable. So it comes with that baffle, but it's just one screw, and you unscrew it and you take it out. Now I've heard the one without the baffle, and it's great. It's louder without being obnoxious. A customer of ours bought one of these and went home and took out the baffles, brought it right back and said, "You guys got to hear this." And he was right. It was awesome. And I could probably put a little video. I know I have a video of that sound on that one, so maybe we'll put it in there if it's worth doing. But these bikes on paper, the GT does not have a lot of horsepower. It's 47 horsepower, but the transmission is perfect. It makes perfect use of that. Combine that with the fact that the engine makes a lot of torque. It's like 80% of its torque at really low RPM, at 2,000 RPM. So you just have all the torque right away, and that makes the bike actually plenty fast, because if you have that torque, it's very reliable, it's very predictable, it's very fun to drive. Oop, I hit neutral there. That was my fault. I shifted into neutral. I got stuck between gears. A lot of this, I've had people say funny comments about I'm going too slow around the turns. It's actually pretty hard to remember what I'm going to say, talk about this. I realize people are watching, critiquing, and try to remember what gear I'm in and everything. So that's not something I normally do, is miss a gear in there. And I was just talking about the transmission. I wouldn't blame that on the transmission. That was just me. I shifted right into neutral and forgot about it, didn't realize it. So I don't hear that exhaust droning out. Let's shift down. Yeah, I just really hear wind noise at this point. Maybe you do too. I'm surprised with how good my sound winds up being on these videos. With the microphones kind of hidden up here in the helmet, and I don't get a lot of wind noise, but I couldn't hear much of the bike there. I heard it a little bit, but it certainly wasn't obnoxious or annoying. You know, if you had have a really loud exhaust, if you've ever taken a bike or even a car with a really loud exhaust on like a road trip for a long time, at those high RPMs, it just drones on and it drives you crazy. This does not do that at all. Here we go. God, it sounds perfect. It sounds very British. It sounds very much like the old Triumphs do, and bikes of the 60s and 70s when Triumph and Norton and BSA and Royal Enfield, which they stopped making those kind of bikes in the 70s. The British, actually, they stopped manufacturing motorcycles in India in 1970. But this sounds like bikes of that era, right when they were at their height of, you know, Britishism, British manufacturing. And then all their manufacturing moved to India until recently when they opened a factory in Argentina. That's where they had been exclusively manufactured. This is awesome. I love this exhaust. It makes a huge difference. It's funny because you kind of, I mean, that's one of the first modifications people do. And it feels like, well, how much of a difference could that make? But when it comes to the characteristics of what it's like to ride a motorcycle, the riding position, which I'm describing with the clip-on handlebars and the lower or the more rearward foot controls, that makes a big difference. The engine characteristics, now this is a very smooth parallel twin, so that has a lot to do with the characteristics of the bike. And then the exhaust note. Is it loud? Is it brappy? Is it kind of thumpery, you know what I mean? And so this gives it the character that I feel like it was meant to have. Like I'm saying that, relating it back to kind of how the British bikes sound, it's the same basic engine design as those kind of parallel twin 650s and 750s, and even the Norton 850s would have been in the heyday of the British bikes. And this is its heritage. You know, this bike in particular is your quintessential cafe racer. They made the Royal Enfield Continental was a single cylinder up until this latest iteration. I don't know what I'm going to do about this guy here. I guess I'm staying in this lane. Wow, that exhaust is amazing. It really sounds perfect. These guys nailed it. But this is how this bike was meant to sound. Like I said, this is a homage to the Cafe Racer. The original Continental GT was a 250 single, and then I think it was a 350 single, and it was definitely most recently a 535 single based on the last Bullet. And these twins are just a whole other level of just awesome performance, and they feel tight, they feel polished, they feel just awesome. This, I don't know, this really makes me, I always thought I was an Interceptor guy. Here we see as I pass, there's the Interceptor in orange, and there's another GT. Those are our demo bikes. But I always thought I was an Interceptor, the Baker Express, which we don't have. We just sold one last night. We don't have in the showroom. We're getting one on a truck next week. But that's the bike I always thought I would have. But man, with this exhaust, I definitely would put this exhaust on it for sure. But with this exhaust, it feels sporty. It feels like a cafe bike. It's awesome. It's amazing. I give it a, I don't know, a 9 out of 10 or something. It definitely gets a little louder, but I don't know if I need louder. The breathy brappiness, it's very hard to explain, but if you know British bikes, if you know the classic Triumphs, that is what I'm talking about. They just have that sound to it. BSAs, the old Royal Enfields. There's one up there on the display, but they have that breathy sound to it. That's just how the engine works. We'll give it one more brap, and then I'll say bye. Wow, yeah, it's awesome here indoors. So anyway, thanks for riding along with me in the loop, and hopefully you check out some of my other videos. If you're in Columbus or in Ohio, come on down. You can maybe see in the video, but we're across from the old Cooper Stadium, kind of downtown Columbus, Ohio. But we'd love to have you come by, or, you know, send us an email, or talk to us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all of those things. Anyway, thank you very much for riding along with me, and I'll see you next time.